You are my home, the light you share. You are my whole life, and stars appear like you.
Hey there friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm so incredibly excited to have you here today. It is just absolutely freezing outside. It is in the 20s right now, which has been the coldest it has been all winter, and I'm getting prepared to get some food together for this very cold day. And I thought, how lovely would it be to kind of bring you through this next week of meals, like dinners and whatnot, because we have an entire week of extremely cold meals. And there's two things that I love in cold weather baking and meal making is that, for one, I'm able to really get some nice hearty meals together because it's so cold and I want to be so cozied up and all of that with all the delicious meals that I'm making. But also, I don't want to go outside. It is just way too cold. I think there's a couple of days where the high is only going to be like 23 degrees outside. So we're going to be actually spending a lot of time indoors. And when we spend a lot of time indoors, we spend a lot of time cooking and baking. So it's the perfect week to kind of get all of that done. I'm really excited, and it's going to be a really lovely one. So I've got some great meal ideas already planned for this week. I have some sourdough bread in the fridge that I prepped for something else a couple of days ago, but then I didn't end up using it for that purpose. So I'm going to be making it for dinner tonight. I'm going to make a nice pesto Parmesan braided loaf to go along with our dinner. I'm going to put together a nice hearty dinner for us all. And I'm going to bring you along, like I said, on all of those things. I know I'm being super chatty today, but my baby is actually asleep in his crib for a nap for like the first time in 3 weeks because I'm pretty sure we got some massive teething going on. So I'm taking advantage of actually being able to talk to the camera for the first time in quite a while. So I'm sorry if I'm being a little chatty, but I can't wait to take you along for all of those things. If you like sourdough bread, definitely this is a great channel for you. Consider subscribing. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy like cooking and baking and all of those wonderful things. And let's get into today's video. So I'm starting the day off by pulling my sourdough dough that I had already in the fridge out and stretching it onto my countertop. I will be making a pesto and Parmesan braided loaf with this, and I don't want to lose all of those beautiful air bubbles in the dough by rolling it out with a rolling pin. So I'm stretching it into a rectangular shape instead by hand. This is a super simple stretch and fold sourdough bread created by using about 500 grams of bread flour or all-purpose flour, 350 grams of water, 50 grams of sourdough starter, very fed, bubbly, and active, and about 10 grams of salt. I would have loved to make some pesto from scratch, but being that we are in the middle of winter and my basil supply is quite small at the moment, I ended up grabbing this from Costco. Once the pesto is all spread out onto the loaf, I then grated some fresh Parmesan cheese on top and started to roll the dough long ways to make a very long roll. When the bread is all rolled up long ways, then you're going to take a knife, slice it down the center to make 2 separate pieces. I keep the roll slightly attached just at the top for the twist. And then once you have your 2 pieces, you're just going to fold one over the other until it is twisted all the way down, and then place it into a circular wreath shape. Once I had my wreath, I placed it on a parchment-lined baking sheet. But if I'm being totally honest and I were to do this all over again, I think I would use my Dutch oven instead. This loaf was delicious, but it did not have the rise that I was really looking for. So once I put it on the sheet, I then brushed it with a nice egg wash to give it a lovely, crispy, golden color. I let that bake in the oven for 400 degrees for about 35 minutes. And like I said, it was absolutely delicious. It just needed a little bit more of a rise. And that's what I love about playing with different recipes, is that I can practice and then try something new the second time. Moving on to the meal itself, I'm going to be making mashed potatoes with green bean casserole and sauteed chicken. I started off by peeling and slicing my potatoes. It doesn't matter how big the chunks are when you're cutting them up because they're going to be mashed later on, so I like to dice them fairly smallish just so that they boil quickly when I stick them in the boiling pot and I'm not waiting there forever for all the potatoes to be cooked through. Now we're going to move on to our green bean casserole. We're going to be making this completely from scratch, so we're going to start by making our onion flour topping. So the way you want to do that is you're going to grab some flour, garlic powder, onion powder, salt and pepper, and mix it all together. I know people like to have measurements for things like this, but I really don't measure it out. I just kind of sprinkle it on until it looks correct and mix it all together with a fork. Then you are going to thinly slice your onions and dip them into your flour mixture to make sort of a coating for them to be sauteed in your cast iron skillet. Add a little oil to your skillet. I like to use extra virgin olive oil. You could use a regular frying pan for this as well, but I really love how hot the cast iron gets to make these onions super crispy. While your onions are crisping up, you're going to want to put some fresh green beans into a pot and boil them for as long as you want. I don't like to set a time for this either because some people like their green beans a little bit more al dente, some like them to be really squishy, so whatever time works best for you is the best time to have. When your onions are fully cooked up, you're going to place them on the side. I like to put them on a plate with a napkin on it, just if there's any residual oil, it kind of soaks all of that up. And next we're going to move on to our cream of mushroom sauce. In your cast iron skillet, melt around 2 tablespoons of butter and then dice up a container of mushrooms and place them in the butter until they are fully coated. Then you're going to add 4 tablespoons of flour on top of the mushrooms. This is going to be your thickening agent to create a really creamy and delicious sauce. Then you're going to add a cup of chicken broth and a cup of cream and just whisk that up until your desired thickness has been obtained. This usually takes somewhere between 5 to 8 minutes. Once your mushroom sauce is completed, you're going to put your beans and your sauce in a casserole dish topped with your frizzled onions and stick that into the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. While the casserole is baking, I stick my chicken strips into my cast iron pan. I don't even wash it out because the mushroom sauce is going to taste so delicious with the chicken as well. So I just throw that straight into the pan and add some salt, garlic, and Italian seasoning on top. Cook the chicken for about 7 to 8 minutes on each side until it is fully complete. It's a super easy way to get chicken quickly and deliciously made. Lastly, while the chicken is cooking, I mash my potatoes. I know everybody has their own way of creating mashed potatoes. My particular favorite is a little bit of butter, a nice amount of cream, salt, and pepper, and I'm done. Honestly, it's a really simple meal and it comes together quite quickly and easily. Aside from making the bread ahead of time, everything else moves very quickly together in the kitchen. It is for sure a family and crowd favorite. My husband even commented the other night that it was kind of like having a little mini Thanksgiving dinner, but like on a much smaller scale. So I was very happy with how this entire meal came out. Moving on to the next recipe, we are going to be making some lasagna from scratch. I am starting this recipe off by making some sourdough lasagna noodles. This is a super simple recipe of just 1 cup of sourdough starter, 4 eggs, and 3 cups of flour. You don't need to pre-mix this mixture, but I tend to like to mix it around with my spatula so that the flour doesn't go flying absolutely everywhere when I stick it into my stand mixer. Then I place it in my stand mixer with the dough hook for about 10 minutes before I take it out and let it rest for at least 30 minutes. While the dough is resting, I take some time to make my sauce mixture. I know that there are plenty of ways to make lasagna sauce, and I think I do it a little different each time depending on what is in my kitchen, which is one of my favorite things about lasagna is you can kind of throw things around, mix in what you have, take out what you don't have. But this is the basic recipe to my favorite type of combination. I place some oil in a Dutch oven and then I saute up my onions and my garlic. Once they have a little bit of a nice translucentness to them, then I place 2 jars of sauce into my pan. I know sometimes people will skimp out on sauce, but I like having a very thick lasagna. So I always do 2 jars of sauce, or it tends to not be enough. Then I'm going to throw in some diced zucchini and spinach, and then you're going to add either mushrooms or ground meat, whatever it is that you fancy. Now that the noodle dough has had some time to rest, I take the dough and I split it into 2 sections. And one of the sections is actually plenty for lasagna. So I wrap the second into some saran wrap and place that into the fridge so that I have it for another night's meal. This is a really easy way to take one task and really spread it out over multiple nights so that you don't have to be creating things over and over again. You have 2 meals, like I said, in one night. I then cut out one of the dough balls into 4 smaller sections, and I start to thread each piece through my flat pasta maker. I go from the number 1 all the way down to the number 4, making a really nice long flat piece of pasta. Once I've done all 4 pieces, I'll actually cut each of those pieces into 2 smaller pieces. I know it's a lot of cutting, but this way you only have to thread the dough 4 times and still get 8 pieces of pasta for your lasagna. Once my noodles are made, all I need to do is assemble. I do 4 layers of noodles, ricotta, and mozzarella. Oh, and the sauce too. Once it is assembled, you are gonna stick it in a 350-degree oven for about, I do 25 minutes with tinfoil on and an additional 5 minutes with tinfoil off. This is actually a very quick meal to cook up versus when you are using hard noodles from the store because the noodles are already soft and ready to cook super fast. Now, it's usually best to let it sit after it comes out of the oven for a good 10 to 15 minutes so that it really sets well, but my family was starving at this point, and so we just sliced right into it, and it was absolutely delicious. Not only that, because we are only a family of 4, we were able to eat this for several days off of this one dish. Now for our last meal, we are making a vegetable dish in a peanut butter sauce. I know that sounds really crazy, but if you have ever had any sort of Asian cuisine or been to an Asian style restaurant, there are tons of peanut sauce dishes, and this is very similar to that. And I'm starting off by boiling 1.5 cups of rice, chopping up my onions and garlic and sticking those into a stack pot, and then slicing up 1 green pepper and adding that to the pot as well. I'm going to peel a sweet potato, cut it down fairly into small pieces, and prepare that to be placed into my stack pot as well while my onions, pepper, and garlic are all sauteing together. I'm then going to grab some cinnamon. This is the secret ingredient to this recipe. It makes it absolutely delicious. And I place that over top of my onions, peppers, and garlic. Again, I don't really have a measurement for this because I just kind of stick it in there until I can really start to smell the notes of cinnamon. After I've added my sweet potatoes, I'm going to add a jar of diced tomatoes. This particular jar is of orange tomatoes that we grew in our garden over the summer. And then I'm going to grab a can of tomato paste as well and pour that into the pot. Finish that off with a cup of water to help steam the potatoes and add some diced zucchini. I also like to stick a little bit of vegetable broth in here as well, just to add that extra flavor, but you don't want to be heavy on the broth because this is not a soup, it's more of like a stew. Finally, you're going to throw in your chickpeas, some corn, and some spinach. The only other seasoning that goes into the entire dish is just salt and pepper. You can throw the lid over the top of your pot and let that steam for about 10 to 15 minutes. You want to make sure you're at a boil, and then once it's boiling, bring it down to about a medium heat. This is all just to make sure that the potatoes are fully cooked through and everything else is nice and cooked. Like I said earlier, this is kind of more like a stew. It's really not a soup, so it should have a nice thickness to it. And if it seems like there's not enough liquid, that's totally okay. Once you put the lid on, it will boil down nicely. Once everything is cooked through, you're gonna add a nice little dab of peanut butter in there, and it becomes a very creamy, nice, thick stew. This is absolutely delicious. We probably eat this at least once a week, and we absolutely love it. So I just want to thank you guys all for watching. Subscribe if you are new around here, and let me know in the comments below which one was your favorite recipe. I'll talk to you guys really soon in another video. Bye.